Question: how to tell a false prophet? Dr. West, how can we tell a false prophet? Well, this is addressed in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 18. It says, "The prophet which shall presume to speak a word in my name, which I have not commanded him to speak, or shall speak in the name of other gods, even that prophet shall die." And then again in Deuteronomy it says this, and I'm quoting in chapter 13, it says, "If there arise among you and giveth thee a sign or a wonder, and the sign or wonder come to pass, saying, Let us go after other gods, thou shalt not listen, ye shall follow after the Lord thy God." That's very clear, and false prophets are very subtle. You have to listen with your spirit or else you'll be taken in by them. Question: Dr. West, there are ifs in the Bible. Could you explain? Yes, ifs have to do with warnings of decisions that are forced to be made, good or bad. The outcome will be good or bad. The wise in their life allow for changes and alterations, and the consequences of this we can see in Genesis 25. An example would be that Rebecca said, "If it be so, why am I thus?" Question, a generated question, and if will force a decision. Again, in 2 Kings, there's an old established truth that we can find. It says, "If we enter, the famine will kill." Well, there's a decision to make. If we enter or if we don't enter, consequences. And in Genesis chapter 18, "The cry which is come unto me, and if not, I will know." So and they're saying if the cry comes up and the if is present, then they will know, good or bad. Now, there's an intuitive, conscious part about that. You will basically know whether something is going to be good or bad for you, and then you have to maybe sometime play with it a little while, but it'll manifest whether it's good or bad before you get into it. You see, life demands that we deal with the ifs in our life from beginning to end. There's never a ceasing of ifs to be dealt with. Hope that helps. Question: living in a hurry. Dr. West, it seems that everything is a hurry these days. Yes, I agree that it is, because I was thinking that every invention will be modified to operate faster. An example was that the horse outran man, and trains outran horses and outdated carts. Combustion engines outdated the steam engine. Electricity is rapidly outdating combustion engines, and soon atomic power will obsolete electric sources. So that's just the way creation is. But there's a word about this in the Old Covenant that God told Daniel. Now this is close to 4,000 years ago now. God told Daniel, "Seal the books, even to the time of the end. Man shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall increase." Now, does that not sound like today's world? So it said in the end time that's going to happen. So meditate on that and learn from it, and you can observe and see what's happening around you. Hope that helps you. Question: what does Jehovah mean? Dr. West, what does the word Jehovah mean? Well, there's no such word as Jehovah. Consonants that make up Jehovah is called the tetragrammaton, and that's where the coinage of the words come forth to make up Jehovah. It's 4 consonants and no vowels. The vowel points have been lost in antiquity. The consonants are YHWH or JHVH, and the vowel points were added probably around the 1000 AD to form Jehovah. They took the vowels in Adonai, and then they inserted those into the Tetragrammaton, and that's how they came up with Jehovah in English transliteration. You see, God gave Moses a name that man can grasp of God himself. He said, I am that I am. That's about as simple as you can get it. Meaning one who is omnipotent, who's omnipresent, and one who is omniscient. That means he knows everything, he's everywhere, and he's all powerful. That's the best definition we can get about what God calls himself. I am. That means what I just stated, that I am. You can meditate on that one. Question: do Mormons practice polygamy? Dr. West, do Mormons still practice polygamy as I heard that they used to? Yes. Years ago, the Mormon church openly practiced polygamy. As a matter of fact, they placed a curse upon all who did not practice its evil. The federal government threatened in 1890 to exile them into Mexico if they continued to practice it and did not recant it. They secretly gave in to the federal government, but they still practice in their own community this evil. Question: where is purgatory? Dr. West, where is purgatory? It does not exist. That's where it is. It doesn't exist. The concept is that some are not good enough to go to heaven or bad enough to go to hell. So therefore, purgatory was an invention, and purgatory was invented to purge the evil out of one to make them able and good enough to go into heaven. But actually, that's where they get the word from purgatory. Comes from the word purge. That's where they get the word purgatory. It doesn't exist. Question: why are there no crosses on Mormon churches? Dr. West, why are there no crosses on Mormon churches? Well, they deny that the cross is the only salvation event, that they say that there's others. And they believe that salvation comes by repentance, baptism, faith, good works, and obeying the laws and ordinances of the Church of Jesus Christ, Latter-day Saints. That's their plan of salvation, which is totally false and evil. They are a non-Christian cult. That's what the Mormon Church is. They're a non-Christian cult, and they should be avoided because they are having believed a lie, and it seems to draw a lot of people. Question: why are there two lineages of Jesus? Well, Matthew gives his lineage through Joseph, and Luke gives his lineage through Mary. The problem with Matthew is that not with Matthew himself, but his lineage, what he gives in his lineage is in his gospel, Matthew's gospel, Jeconiah, who's mentioned in the lineage of Jesus Christ, but in there, his seed were forbidden to sit upon the throne of Israel. So that's why the emphasis is placed on Luke's, which gives Jesus' lineage through Mary, a pure lineage. Hope that explains it to you. Question: why would God command the Hebrews to murder? Well, he didn't tell them to murder, he told them to kill. There's a difference between murdering and kill, just like the old covenant where it says, thou shalt not kill. It really, the Hebrew says, thou shalt not murder. So in Deuteronomy chapter 18, God told Moses, and this is the reason for God telling them to go and kill these people, these ones that you just mentioned. God told Moses, when thou art come into, now he's speaking about the people, when thou art come into the land, the Lord thy God giveth thee, thou shalt not learn to do after the detestable things of their nation. That you won't do that. Those nations, they practice maidens burnt sacrifice. They sacrifice their young to idols. They consulted evil spirits, which God forbids, and they ask the dead for advice. And God explicitly says we are not to attempt to converse with the dead. Necromancy, God forbids that. And in verse 13, Deuteronomy 18, it says, thou shalt be blameless with the Lord thy God. Blameless, that's what we're to be. In Exodus 20, it says that God says, I am a jealous God, visiting the father's iniquities upon his children until the third and fourth generation of them who hate me. That's how serious God is about the thing. Question: can Christians practice and have artificial insemination? Yes, they can. Can Christians have artificial inseminations? Yes, they can. But the sperm must be the husband's sperm. If it's not, if they try to impregnate his wife's seed with another man's sperm, that is adultery. It can be done, but only if they use the father's sperm. Of course, if you have a problem totally, there's always methodology to adopt and then raise that child as your own. That would be a good option to consider. There's so many homeless children out there. I hope that helps. Lord bless you.